Hello Oilers fans, Austin here, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about Evander Kane, his situation in Edmonton, whether they can keep him, whether they should keep him, and kind of his whole situation. There's been a lot of discourse around Evander Kane lately, whether the Oilers are going to try and trade him, if they might just put him on LTIR for the season, and then maybe bring him back in the postseason, assuming the Oilers make the playoffs this upcoming year. Now, during the Stanley Cup Final, when he was being scratched, I did make a video on Evander Kane. I discussed if he had played his last game as an Oiler, but I didn't really go in super depth with, my talking points in that video. I was just kind of speculating based on the fact that he hadn't been playing. I didn't realize that he was as injured as it turns out he was. He's dealing not only with a sports hernia injury, but also a hip injury too. So, there's a lot going on with Evander Kane. Obviously, there's off-ice stuff too, but I'm not going to talk about the off-ice stuff. He does a lot of really good stuff off the ice in terms of the charity work, but, when it comes to the drama, the speculation, the rumors, I don't get involved in that. I'm talking about Evander Kane just as the hockey player, and whether it's worth the Edmonton Oilers keeping him or not, and whether they even can move him, whether there's a team able to take him, because I think there's still value for him as a player. I think there's still value for that type of player in the NHL. I just don't know if it's with the Edmonton Oilers, considering the forwards that they went out and signed. Evander Kane, even if he's healthy, he's been bumped down that depth chart, so it'd be very interesting to see if the Oilers can even clear enough cap space to be cap compliant with Evander Kane on the roster. Now, if you end up enjoying today's video, just make sure you hit that like button, and if you end up really liking it, make sure to subscribe. I've got a ton of Oilers content planned for the rest of the summer, and not just Oilers content, but hockey content in general. So let's kind of jump into the Evander Kane discussion here. So he has 2 years remaining at $5.125 million per year, and obviously when he's healthy, he puts the puck in the net. We've seen him put the puck in the net a lot next to Connor McDavid, but he hasn't been playing next to Connor McDavid very much the last year and a half or so, and injuries have played a part in that too. He has never played a season of 82 games. He's never played 82 games in a single season in his entire career. Some of that is injury related. Some of that is on ice and off ice related issues. Like I said, I'm not getting involved with the off ice stuff. I'm just going to talk about the on ice, how he's impacting the team on a night to night basis during the regular season. And the fact that he's never played 82 games in a season is a huge red flag. I actually didn't even know about that stat until I was on Twitter this morning at NHL_Sid. He is one of the best, most analytically minded Oilers fans out there. He writes for Oilers Nation. Make sure you give that guy a follow, by the way. He had put that out, that little fun fact. Well, fun fact in quotation marks. It's not actually a fun fact. So that was a really interesting fact that I wanted to include in this video. I did not realize that he's never played 82 games in a season. So that's obviously, that doesn't look great for the long-term prospects of trying to keep him for the next 2 years. I will say, though, he did play 77 games this year, even with a sports hernia and apparently a hip injury now. That might have been happening during the playoffs. So, he did play. Should he have been playing? Probably not. Oilers probably would have been best to shut him down before the trade deadline, free up some cap space to acquire more forwards or defensemen, which they did not do, but that doesn't matter. We're talking about the future here. Like I mentioned, he has a sports hernia and hip injury currently. He turns 33 in August, so he's on the wrong side of 30. Father Time is not very kind to this style of hockey player. These power forwards, these physical, checking, scoring forwards, they usually fall off a cliff in terms of their production, and we've started to see that production dip a little bit here. Like I mentioned, though, the injury situation 2 years ago, he had his wrist sliced, which was horrifying, and that probably is really tough to get over mentally too. I think we all forget about the mental aspect of what goes on the ice sometimes. And when you suffer a horrific injury, if you witness a horrific injury, I know for me, I broke my arm playing hockey when I was 11 years old, and I still get mentally affected by that every time I step on the ice, even with a beer league team where there's no body checking. That is still always in the back of my mind. So I couldn't imagine going through what Evander Kane has gone through on the ice with an injury like that, and then trying to still play at the level that he expects to be playing at and how the team expects him to play. So there's a lot of pressure there, and I totally understand the mental aspect of that, how that can affect a player emotionally. And for Evander Kane, the fact that he was able to even score 24 goals this year, the fact he scored 16 in 41 games 2 years ago with that injury, pretty impressive. However, like I mentioned, it's just his foot speed slowing down. He's not a great passer. He is going to be turning 33. You wonder if he can keep up the 20 goals or more during a season. And speaking of goal scoring, when he's on the ice, he's been outscored 77-70 at 5v5 in the last 2 years. So that's a -7 goal differential at 5v5 when he's on the ice. So yes, he is putting the puck into the net. However, the puck is also going into the net when he's on the ice. Again, there's a lot of different metrics you can look at. It's not always, you can't just blame one player. There are 5 other guys plus your goaltender, so 6 players going on the ice at any given time during a hockey game. We've seen the Oilers' struggles defensively and their goaltending struggles, so it's tough to look at that aspect and be like, oh, Evander Kane, he's not helping the team when it comes to the 5-on-5 scoring, because when he's on the ice, they're getting scored against. Well, when you're on the ice, when Jack Campbell was behind him, and even Stuart Skinner's had his struggles too, it's gonna make the numbers look a little bit iffy. Of course, when you compare it to other teammates like McDavid and Draisaitl, they continuously outscored their opponents at 5v5. But again, not everything is black and white. There is a gray area, but that is a stat that I wanted to talk about. And then in the playoffs too, the last 2 years, outscored 26-18 at 5v5 the last 2 playoff seasons. Again, in 2022-23, that series against LA and Vegas, Stuart Skinner, he did not play well at all. He was yanked 3 or 4 times in the postseason, and Evander Kane happened to be on the ice during a lot of the goals against, and you want Stuart Skinner to make some saves. And then even this past postseason, Evander Kane was on the ice for a lot of goals against. He was a -7 this year in 20 games played during the playoffs. But again, you can't just always blame one singular player. There's a lot that goes on the ice, but there is a bit of a pattern here. There is a pattern of Evander Kane not being able to drive play at 5v5, or not being on a line that can drive play at 5v5. He's most effective when he's with Draisaitl or McDavid, and if he's not playing with either of them, his metrics are really, really poor. And he's just not effective. He needs someone that can get him the puck so that he can shoot it. He is a volume shooter, and for Evander Kane, the last 2 years at even strength in the playoffs and regular season, there is a sign that being scored against, that net negative on the ice, is starting to overtake his game a little bit. And for the Edmonton Oilers, that's not a good thing, because obviously to win hockey games, you have to outscore your opponent. And when we look at the penalty situation, obviously we know his style of play. He's going to take some penalties. He's going to fight every now and then. The last 2 years, he's taken 46 penalties and he's drawn 33 penalties, so that's a -13 penalty differential. So he puts his team on the penalty kill a lot. Obviously, the Oilers' penalty kill, it's a team game. You want your team to be able to step up for your teammate, especially when Evander Kane is regularly stepping up for his teammates on the penalty kill, and we saw how good the penalty kill was during the playoffs this year. Hopefully, the Oilers can build on that. So Evander Kane, when we look at the penalty situation, obviously with his style of play, that's not something that I'm super concerned about, but it is something that I did want to mention, because if you are regularly in the box a lot more than you're being able to draw, that can lead to long-term unsustainable issues for your penalty kill. And sometimes, depending on the situation in the game too, if it's a tie game late in the third and you take a dumb penalty, that's also not a good thing. Evander Kane, he's an emotional player. He does get involved after whistles. He can be kind of hot-headed on the ice. I will say, though, he was pretty restrained this year, especially in the postseason. Now, I will say, though, obviously the injuries played a part in that. It's not like he could play the physical style that he wants to. For Evander Kane, if there's going to be success in Edmonton, if they are going to keep him, if they're not going to move him, if he manages to get even like 95% healthy, I think Evander Kane would be best suited to not play that overly aggressive physical style. I think if he just focused on a heavy forecheck and not fighting and not getting involved after whistles and just shooting the puck when he gets it on his stick, there's value there. I think that's someone that you can maximize the value with, and I think he can even score 30 goals again in his career. Now, I might be out to lunch when I say that, but it is possible. It's just the way he plays, and these injuries now, they are starting to take a toll. For Evander Kane, I want him to succeed. I don't ever want to see an Oilers player not succeed, because if they're not succeeding, then that likely means the team is not succeeding. And as a fan, obviously, I want my team to win. So for Evander Kane, when we look at all of these, different facts here, the stats, should they keep him? It would probably be best long-term to move on from him. Well, I guess short-term, because he only has 2 years left on his deal. It would be best short-term to try and move on. I'm sure there's a team out there that would be willing to take his contract. However, he does have a no move. He would have to waive it if Edmonton wanted to make a trade. And then, of course, if they don't move him during the summer, at the trade deadline, that no move turns into a 16-team no trade list. So when the trade deadline hits, Evander Kane can submit a 16-team no trade list, and then that gives the Oilers flexibility to move him somewhere where he doesn't have to necessarily waive it because he's already waiving for 16 teams. So for Evander Kane and the Edmonton Oilers, obviously I hope things work out. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to keep him, if they should keep him. When I kind of just break everything down like this, I think it would be best to move on. Evander Kane, he came into Edmonton, he rebranded himself. He got himself, back on track after the off ice, stuff that was going on in San Jose. And I'm really happy for him. He's done a lot of charitable work in the city of Edmonton, and that's something that cannot be understated. I know he just built a house there. I know he has a couple kids. Obviously, it's tough to just uproot your entire life. I know it comes with the territory, so I'm trying to be I'm trying to be really fair with Evander Kane. But when it comes to the business side, you're in the business of winning in the NHL. The Edmonton Oilers would be best suited to move on. What do you think the Oilers should do with Evander Kane? Do you think they should move on from him? Do you think they should keep him? What do you think is the best solution here moving forward? Make sure you let me know your comments or your thoughts in the comment section below. And like I said, make sure you hit like on the video. Make sure to subscribe if you really liked it. Tell someone that you love them. And as always, fight like Ben, fight like a kid. Super important. Let's go Oilers.